Thank you so much. When they asked me to come here today and say a few words about ARCC, I was really honored. It's an organization I've known for a long time. Then they told me I only had a few minutes. So I'm going to tell you that I can't possibly convey all of the good works that they do or the importance of organizations like ARCC in the time that I have, but I'm going to do my best to try. I really had the pleasure of learning about this group before I became a judge. When I was fortunate enough to be a community prosecutor, it gave me a chance within the DA's office to actually work on crime prevention and intervention, really a noble goal. I've been involved in the criminal justice system either as an attorney or as a judge for the last 19 years. I started when I was like 10. But during that time, you know, I've obviously been exposed to a lot of youth in the system and whatnot. I think that many people in the public might not realize this about people who do work in our system, but those of us who do work in the justice system, especially when we're dealing with youth, find no pleasure in prosecuting young children, in putting them in custody, or really seeing them in the system at all. I think if you asked anybody in the justice system, all of us would say we would rather that they are not there. So by the same token, it is obviously the goal and the obligation of the justice system to make sure that our communities are safe, to hold individuals accountable for their actions, and to, quite frankly, to protect victims of crime. I currently preside, as you heard, over felony criminal trials, which means I hear kind of the worst of the worst: homicides, gang trials, sexual assaults, robberies, and so on. By the time someone comes to me in court, quite frankly, it's really probably too late. If a jury convicts them of a crime they've been charged with in my courtroom, the consequences that they face are severe. However, frequently I will hear about some of the stories that got them where they are. I may hear that from the defendant charged in my case, maybe sometimes from the history that I'll get from probation, and sometimes from a witness testifying in a case. These stories often reveal steps along the way that really could have maybe changed the outcome, changed what I'm seeing in the courtroom. If only someone had intervened, if only there had been a different path for them. If someone had helped a struggling student finish his education, if someone had been a mentor to an at-risk youth, if someone had shown them a different path, and quite frankly, just if someone had cared. I had a story one time of an adult gang member in my courtroom who was currently spending some time in prison, and he was describing really his path of where he got to where he was. He had no family support growing up, and ended up in a children's shelter. He started committing crime, which include throwing rocks at police officers, some other crimes, eventually landed himself in juvenile hall. While at the hall, he met gang members, unfortunately. These individuals were much older than he was at the time, and he looked up to them. After his release, he didn't have any family support, ended up in foster care. He didn't have a mentor, he didn't have someone involved in his life. He continued committing crime. Eventually, these crimes grew and started involving weapons, and then he ended up at our juvenile ranch in the county from which he ran. During this time in life, he's in and out of custody. This is a teenager. This is a young kid who's in and out of custody. Ultimately, he joins a gang. He tells us he wanted to be part of that gang. He said that they treated him like a brother. Some of them looked up to him. He looked up to some of them like a father figure because he never had a father figure. He ultimately joined the gang by getting jumped in. I know many people here know what that means, but if you don't, basically they will beat you up to show that you are a member of their gang. When he was asked how he felt when he was getting beaten to jumped into gang, his answer was, "I was happy." He said he was happy because he was glad that he was finally part of something. To cut to the end of the story, his gang involvement ultimately ended him up in prison, and that's the circumstance in which I saw him. Quite honestly, for those who are involved in gang, prison is probably the better alternative to death, which are the two alternatives that I see to gang lifestyle. I come to these events, and I have over the years, I think for kind of a selfish reason. I support organizations like ARCC, and I need to, because I need to know that there are stories that have other endings. I need to know that there are different twists and turns in these plots that we see, and that there are stories that can result in a happy ending. I think you have to just hear the stories from our youth here today, and Talina and Isla, wherever you are. I heard you doing your sound check earlier. You guys did awesome, really great speakers. But you just need to hear stories like them, or go on ARCC's website and click on the success stories and read some of those to know that ARCC can change their lives and create those happy endings. ARCC does what we need to do to reach everybody's goals of safe communities, healthy families, and less youth involved in our system. They work to address substance abuse and mental health issues, to prepare kids for schools, to keep kids in school by addressing truancy issues, to provide mentors, and to prevent violence. And most of all, what they do is care. If that gang member in the story I told you had someone like ARCC in his life, I believe it would have made all the difference in the world. We would be here possibly today celebrating his achievements instead of discussing his path to prison. We need groups to work on interventions for our youth. We need groups to teach healthy lifestyles to our families. We need people that care, and we need ARCC. Thank you.